around, so you will feel like really in the plane while you are flying around, and you can have amazing dogfights with 16 people together. Anyway, he will present us and tell us all the details. We started the demo so that you see what is he talking about. Look, so this is it basically. This is it, and afterwards you can try it, and it's an amazing experience. I did try already, and yes, you can just look around and feel this plane. Anyway, cool.
Hi guys, sorry. Okay. Hi guys, first of all I would like to say sorry for my bad English, but George will help me if I'm in big trouble.
Yes.
And sorry for the technical problem. My name is József Trencsényi from Artex Games. Artex Games is a small game developer company since 1999. We are working on C64, Amiga, PC, Mac, and console games. And we start to develop on mobile at 2003. We started with Java, Symbian, and handheld devices. And 2009 we start on the iPhone and Android devices. We have 25 mobile games on the different app stores, both on IPs and for hire projects for four different platforms: iOS, Android, Windows Phone 8, and BlackBerry 10. We use Unity since 2009, and we are working on virtual reality mobile games. It's a simulator, but not simulator, it's an arcade game, arcade dogfight game in the World Wide One environment. Thank you. It's a single and online multiplayer mobile game. In online mode, you can play with 16 players against each other, and on single player against bots. The game is mobile only at the moment. You can use VR, HMD, and gamepad devices. But you can, if you haven't do this dive or raise, you can play the game without it and use the touchscreen or the normal mode. Okay, back to the online, back to the game modes. Play against AI bots in single player mode, and we have a worldwide multiplayer online mode, servers in the US, Europe, and Asia, without geolocation restrictions. You can play with your friends from Hungary to Japan, in USA, or worldwide. We can, okay.
Yes, in Hungarian.
In Hungarian. Bocsánat. Jelen pillanatban 20 000 olyan user tudunk kiszolgálni, aki egyszer játszik a játékkal.
We can serve 20,000 users real time, so at the same time.
Természetesen, mivel különböző időzónák vannak, ezért nyilván, hogyha a világszerte nem játszik mindenki egyszerre.
Of course, there are different time zones, so usually people don't play at the same time.
Ezért ez a 20 000 konkurens user nagyjából egy olyan 2 millió letöltést tud egyszerre kezelni, tehát 2 millió letöltésnek megfelelő usert tud kiszolgálni.
So we can serve up to 2 million downloads.
Ahogy korábban mondtam, a multiplayerben 16 játékos tud egyszer egymás ellen játszani.
As I said earlier, 16 players can play in multiplayer at the same time in one game.
Minden egyes játékos ugyanolyan lehetőségekkel rendelkezik, ugye ez egy első világháborús szimulátor.
So each player has the same characteristics, and this is a World War I game.
Nincsenek a repülőgépeken speciális fegyverek, csak kizárólag a géppuskák.
You just have these machine guns on the planes.
Ezért ugye mindenki ugyanolyan esélyekkel indul.
So everyone starts with the same possibilities.
A játék az ingyenes lesz.
It's a free game.
Reklámokkal monetizálunk benne, illetve hogyha valaki nem szeretné reklámokat nézni, akkor in-app purchase-zel megvásárolhatja a lehetőséget, hogy eltűnjenek a reklámok.
We monetize only with advertisements, and there will be an in-app purchase to turn off any advertisement.
A játék ebben az évben iPhone-ra, iPad-re és Android-ra fog megjelenni.
This game will be published on iPhone, Android, and what is the third? BlackBerry.
Jelenleg az idén csak Android-ra, iPhone-ra és iPad-re.
Android, iPhone, iPad, sorry.
Következő évben tervezzük a BlackBerry és a Windows Phone 8 megjelenést.
Next year we plan to release on Windows Phone and BlackBerry.
Amennyiben a játék valamennyire sikeres lesz, akkor tervezzük desktop verzió elkészítését is.
If the game is successful, we will also create it for the desktop.
Természetesen akkor az Oculus Riftet is fogja támogatni a játék.
And then we will support Oculus Rift too.
Jelen pillanatban ugye a mobil verzió a különböző VR headseteket támogatja.
Currently the mobile version supports the different virtual reality headsets.
Mint a Duravis Drive, a Waze.
Like Duravis Drive, this is the Duravis Drive, and Waze, and
VR2Go és a Google-nak a karton Google Cardboardját.
Yes, the game supports Google's simple cardboard headset.
Láthatjuk itt az előbb a demo alatt a játéknak ugye szükségünk van egy gamepadre, a játék élvezetéhez, vagy élvezőjetéhez, igen.
Yes, if you have a virtual reality headset on, you cannot use a touchscreen, so you need a mobile controller to control the game.
Hogyha jelen pillanatban minden nagyobb gyártónak a kontrollereit támogatjuk.
Currently we support all the major game controllers.
Mint például a Mogát, a PlayStation-t.
Like Moga and PlayStation.
És az Android-ot, illetve az iPhone-nak a kontrollereit.
The iPhone controls and the iDroid, you said.
Az iDroid az egy androidos kontroller, yes. És minden olyan kontrollert, ami az iPhone-hoz hozzáköthető, azt támogatjuk.
Yes, we support the iDroid and all the controllers for the iPhone.
Abban az esetben, hogyha nincsen kontrollerünk.
If we don't have any controllers.
Vagy nincs virtuális headsetünk.
Or we don't have any virtual headsets.
Akkor a játék normál módon is játszható touchscreen-nel.
Then you can use the game with normal touchscreen.
Ebben az esetben kétféle kamera mozgás van.
You have two different types of camera movement.
A hagyományos, amikor fix kamerával játszhatunk, ugye a játékos előre néz.
Like you can have a fixed camera where you're looking forward.
Illetve ugyanúgy, mint ahogy az előbb mutattunk nektek, körbe lehet forgatni a telefont.
Or you can have a flexible camera too.
De ebben az esetben nem a kontrollerrel irányítjuk a játékot, hanem a touchscreen-nel.
But we control the game using the touchscreen. Yes.
Technikai részéről csak annyit mondanék el, hogy készítettünk egy saját headtracking megoldást.
So we created or custom virtual reality head tracking solution.
Igazából erre azért volt szükség, mert az összes gyártó kizárólag iPhone-ra és Android-ra készítette el a fejlesztő eszközeit.
Usually all the major hardware companies design their head tracking for their own phones.
És mivel szerettük volna játékot kiadni BlackBerry-re és Windows Phone 8-ra, és ezért a sajátot kellett csinálnunk.
So, and we wanted to support BlackBerry and Windows Phone too, so that's why we created our own head tracking system.
Szeretném megköszönni a figyelmeteket, és elnézést kérek az angolomért és a technikai problémákért.
Thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry for my not yet perfect English.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you. Any questions?
Még annyit szeretnék mondani, hogy aki esetleg utána ki szeretnék próbálni, természetesen van rá lehetőség.
You can try this game afterwards, after the presentations. Okay, questions?
Kérdezd magyarul. Majd csak a magyarul válaszolok, és megfordítjuk.
3D mobilra nem akartatok fejleszteni? Ilyen szemben nélküli 3D mobilra?
Igazából...
I just translate to English. The question was if they wanted to support 3D mobiles, so like 3D screens that she mentioned, and the answer is?
Igazából ugye ez az első kör. Első körben ezekre a device-okra próbáljuk meg elkészíteni a játékot. A következő körben ugye meglátjuk azt, hogy mennyire van rá igény, illetve érdeklődés. Ha van, abban az esetben bővíteni fogjuk az eszközöknek a számát. Terve van véve ez is többek között, illetve ha megyünk desktopra, akkor szeretnénk támogatni a 3D-s tévéket és az összes többi hasonló eszközt.
Okay, this is just the first phase of this game, and if it will be successful, we will support not only these new screens, but the 3D televisions and many other devices too. Any other questions? Actually, I have a question, if you don't. Do you plan to make an asset of your head tracking solution and then sell it in the store?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. I would have interest. Okay.
Okay, köszönöm szépen a figyelmeteket.
So, thank you very much. And the next presentation will be Gábor Megellai.
Okay, hi everyone. Actually it's working. So, I'm Gábor Megellai, I'm a cognitive psychologist and a game designer as well. And I want to talk about tonight about the GameAnalytics software. Actually that's a software, it's just a solution for the Unity 3D. And I was a game analyst for a year at the Artist Studios. This is a really small indie developer team, and they create a 3D racing game for, it sounds actually a little bit silly, for magic horses, but it's something like Mario Kart, and I helped them to develop and test the game as a psychologist. The title is The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. It's because it's using game metrics, yeah, thanks. The using game metrics actually is really good because you can collect a lot of game metrics from every players around the world, but it's actually bad because these tools are not really perfect. And if you want to create a proper analysis, if you want to create a proper game metrics, you have to work a lot of this. This is the ugly part. So, actually, what is the data-driven development? If you are a really old developer, and I've seen, you mentioned the Commodore 64, so you don't really want to use game metrics because these were different times. When you created games, I don't know, maybe just 10 years ago, and you just published it, just sell it on CD, so you don't have a chance to collect data from the players. You have to create it really fast, and you just test it by itself and publish it, and you had no chance to change the game. But today games is actually a little bit different because you usually upload the game on the asset store. And I want to talk about mobile games, of course, but if you see Steam, you see a lot of updates from these games. So you have you have a contact with the gamers all the time, with the players, and you can modify your game based on these data. Or just you can shorten the test phase. If you see some green light project or just Kickstarter, it's usually just data collecting from the players. They're just testing the game. But you collecting the data through internet, through these game metrics, it's actually pretty useful because you don't have the testing group by yourself. And the free-to-play model and the parallel multiplayers, it becomes really important in game metrics because in the free-to-play games, you have one free-to-play games usually just live for 8-10 years today. But most of the players just leave the game after 3 months because they just bored, they just play with the game enough. And you have a constant changing in your game metrics. And you have to adjust the game for every time when you have a new group in your game. So you have to collect the data and just try to tracking them. The parallel multiplayer is the same thing because you have a lot of players that never met each other. And you have to create a really working multiplayer environment to be correct for them. So there's a lot of free solutions for collecting data from the players. The Google Analytics, the Flurry, and I want to talk about the GameAnalytics. It is the most important thing. So Google Analytics actually is a simple, straightforward, built for web application. The Flurry is a bit more complicated. It's usually just built for marketing. But the GameAnalytics is actually built for games, designed for games. And it has a really nice heat map if you are a Unity 3D user. I want to talk about it bit more later. So, but actually there is a plot twist. These tools are not really free. If you want to download the GameAnalytics, you just go to the asset store in the Unity and just type in the GameAnalytics and they just yelling out the monitor, the screen, so it's free, you don't have to pay. No, it's not true, because if you want the proper analysis, this is the ugly part, because this is the bad part. You have to pay for it. You have to call someone, just write an email, just telling about your project. And these people who made that GameAnalytics just try to analyze your game and getting your feedbacks. So it's usually the online tools, the raw data, some extra gadget. It's free, but it's not enough. Because the problem with the online tools is that they're using pre-made variables. You don't have to create or change them. Is it just usually just a mean or a median? But the Flurry doesn't even tell you which one is the most important number. And if you want to download data and then try to sequence your players, the sequencing means you just, I want to download from the players to just play with the game at Christmas and just try to sequence them. You have to wait for hours or maybe days. And proper analysis is impossible because usually just what you see on the screen is what you get. They just throwing out numbers from the game and from the game. And the problem is these numbers and graphs in the online tools. If you ever try to collect data from players through Flurry or GameAnalytics, you just see it's just bullshit. Sorry about that, but it's just fake because you don't get any meaningful data from these players. The problem is with the statistics. Usually they just give out means because if you want a proper analysis, you have to pay for every other things, the median, the mode, the range. Just imagine two graphs. The first one is just clones, maybe just stormtroopers from the Star Wars prequels, equal people, and you have a different graph, and these people are just really very. Maybe some of them is just a dwarf and other people is just the big giants, but you try to compare the means from these two groups. Maybe you get a similar or just the same means. And that example sounds a little bit dizzy, but it's actually true if you have a game, because most of the game design force the player to behave equal in the game. They're just clones because they didn't have a chance to react to your game. And other times they have a lot of freedom, and they just do a lot of other things. They just do crazy things, but you don't see that from this data. You miss all the categorical data. You don't have a chance to compare two groups from these games, and you don't have a chance to know your group. It's just you have only just some really basic numbers. And these numbers just sometimes says, okay, your groups do better at this week, but it doesn't mean anything because maybe that week was just a crazy week and some players just create a really high number in that. But the graphs are also really bad because you just see that this is a real graph and that shows that standard deviation in the data. It just shows that which one is the show the interval of the changes in your groups. Which it's higher, then that group is just became more chaotic. And this is the really proper standard deviation graph. And this most of the time is just missing from these tools. So, what's the solution? First of all, you have to try collect data by yourself, downloading raw data from these servers. And yes, it's really painful. I just learned on the hard way. So first of all, if you want to download data from the player, you have to start tagging events, just like, I don't know, just showing numbers, showing events in the game. So I think this is important. And the second one is just try to explore your games. And this is the most painful part of the analysis, just downloading and cleaning raw data and try to analyze it in usually just in the third software. And yes, so the first step is just preparing for a game, for analysis. Most of the online tool and GameAnalytics as well just give you default variables at the first time. It's just the system info, FPS, level tracking, error messages, regions, just basic stuff. So all the mobile phone just sending this data for the server. And every other thing is custom variables. And you have to know your game because some event is impossible. So I mean, when I worked on the game and we tried to tag some collision in the game, and it became quickly impossible because the Unity tagged everything as a collision in the game. So we cannot separate, we couldn't separate the real events from the fake events. And it creates some heat maps and normal events for analysis. And it's pretty cool yourself. And you have to care for the unique and aggregated data. This part is when the analysis becomes a bit more interesting. So the online tool is just cool for tracking your game real time, but these data is just usually just it's just for exploration. Just I see something happened in my game. The heat map is actually really slow. It's 24-48 hours. You see someone, and if you want to download the raw data, you have to wait as well. So, as I say, these tools are not really free. If you want a really quick and proper analysis, you have to pay for it, and they send it to you. And if you want to work with the raw data, and I did, you have to care with the time and the segment. And the problem is the raw data contain every event and uses. The raw data, when I download the game from the game, it is just a really big, and I say big, it's just 8 or 10 gigabytes TXT. It was a JSON file with a lot of data. And it's actually segmented, so I get, I don't know, maybe nearly 100 different JSON files. And I have to imagine these separated files first. And I had to write a custom script to pull out information in these files before I start to work on an analysis. And when I finished that, I had to create a decent data file to work with SPS, SPS, PPR Studio. These programs are usually just for analysis if you don't really familiar with it. The Excel is do as well. And when I did the analysis, I just tried to compare means and variables on the statistical level. I measured a lot of correlation, I did the cluster analysis, and I tried to make some nice graphs for my team. So this is the test case. I was working on, this is the secret of the Magic Crystal, the Race DSC. It's a little bit silly game, but actually it's pretty fun. And I create a lot of custom variables for the Unity, the power-ups, the number of collisions, the positions, the final resistance, a lot of other things, and we create a screen to rate your experience screen, and the players had to push a button, just rate the experience to go in the game. And this is the heat map. This is one of the most important things in the game analytics. It creates an event map about your games. If you see these dots, it's usually just the time when the players overtake other players. And that map is just, what can I say, it's just forced on the asset, forced on the unities, and you can see in nearly real time see what happens in your game. And I don't really see that. Actually, these real lines actually are artifact from a game because it is a multiplayer game and this is lag. And some players just jumped out because they have better internet, and these red lines is just a lot of overtake. And if you see, there was actually, it was a test version of the game. There's some problem with the track because it became really interesting at the beginning. So it was really cool, the players just fighting with each other, but they usually just lost the race if they cannot overtake anyone. And if you see, just the overtakes becomes really rare at this point. And the other interesting things, if the player raced with artificial, with AI, so the AI wasn't perfect as well, because it was a testing phase, yes. And it was actually just, the point by point artificial intelligence. They just start from here, go there, and take a turn, and so on, and so on, and so on. So these points are the player just overtake the AI. So the heat map doesn't really the most accurate information from your game, but it's really interesting. Just imagine that if you create an FPS, a multiplayer FPS, and just tag every kill or just every power-up, so power-up using on your map, you see what is the deviation of the player's behavior on the track. The other interesting thing was that when I started working with the data, 25% of the players never used any power-ups. This is the other problem with the online tools, because they usually just see the numbers and something happened in the game. But you don't see that when something didn't happen in the game. But when I see the data, it just turns out that most of the players just forget the button. They create really big power-up buttons in the game, just push that U. And they just didn't do that, and it's really interesting. And there's one more problem with the power-ups, because we created the power-ups, we just say it was the weakest power-up in the game, because it wasn't really funny, it wasn't, it's just spectacular and anything. We didn't create nice graphics for that. And it turned out most of the players just win a game with that power-up. And it was so surprising when I say to the developer, they just didn't believe me for a week, because Gábor, don't do that, because that power-up is just bad. But it was actually better. So the time is irrelevant. It's one more interesting because it's a racing game, and I did a lot of correlation with that number, with the time, and it's turned out that time is absolutely irrelevant in the game, especially if you have power-ups, because power-ups is a game changer. When one player just use one power-up, and all the time is just is just changed by every player, because the power-ups affects everyone on the screen. This is the artifact from the game design. So when you create a Mario Kart kind of game, you don't have to care with the time. And it's some interesting other things. The pro gamers, so the best gamers were the Western European users. They're really cool, and the Eastern European just slightly less pro. And the North American was, I'm sorry about that, but they were losers. They just lose the game all the time. But one more thing, the North American was the most aggressive players on the track. They just run everything. If they get a power-up, they just kill everybody. They just didn't care with winning. They just wanted to destroy. And the Western European is a little bit similar to the North American users, and so there's no big change between the North American and Western European, but the Eastern European just, okay, I don't want to hurt you, I just want to play, and they didn't use any power-ups, they didn't run anyone, they just behaved really nicely. And it was the honesty, because we asked the players, is that game was actually good? Did you enjoy the experience? And most of the time, the Eastern European just tried to be, I think, honest, because they just if I found a player who just liked the game, they pushed all the time with the button 5 because this is a 5 rate, 5 stars. That game is awesome. But the North American and the Western European people usually just say, if I win, I like the game. So if they lose, they just push the 1. That game is bad. So if you ask the players, do you like my game? Just ask them first. Have you win? And yes, the onward thing is there's a really high deviation in the data set. It means actually players behave really chaotic. And this is a really strong, really important information if you are using game metrics, exploring a game without using SPSS, Excel, or any other statistical tools, because the high deviation means usually that mean, that median that you get from the online tool is usually just false because it's just bullshit. And people are usually just wandering in the game. If you have some problem with the game, maybe just your menu system is bad, or just the level is bad. Most of the players just quickly lose the track nearly immediately, and they just just pushing the button and trying to find. They just don't stop and think and okay, where is I don't know the proper menu that I need. They just trying everything and pushing everything, just a madman. And most of the players just neutral. They just didn't really care with your game. They just wanted to play. But some other players just just start to yell. So that game is just bad, and they just give 1 point for everything. And other players just really like to give 5 points for everyone. So when you see the players in the asset store, when you see the players when you're just rating the game, they just usually most of the players just don't care with rating or just don't do anything else. Okay, and the most of the time they just rating your game is in absolute. And yes, inexperienced players are really noisy. They just just wandering in the game, and they don't know what they do. So the noobs usually just kill your data analysis as well. So thank you. This is my experience with the GameAnalytics. Question?
Thank you. I've got 3 questions, if I may.
Okay.
Okay, so first, you mentioned conclusions after the analysis. How do you decide how can you improve the game after these conclusions?
Actually, we had a lot of questions about the game before we started to analyze. So when we create the variables from the game for the analysis, we have actually questions. So if we get answers, we just try to build in the design after that. But sometimes it's not so easy, because sometimes we get a lot of surprising data, and the designer or just the programmer says it's impossible to build in a design at this point of the development.
That would be my second question. So how can you decide what most important KPIs were you looking for? So
actually, that game was a multiplayer game. So we concentrated on the power-ups and the player's behavior in the game. We try to create a cool power-up system, because as I said, the power-ups just decide everything after 5 minutes, after 1 minute in the game. So it is again a predefined question for us, which one is the most important power-ups. So backtracking and analysis sometimes is really hard, because you have a lot of data, a lot of noise. But if you don't have a proper question on that, sometimes it's just a pain in the ass to analyze.
And my third question, you mentioned Flurry, Google Analytics, GameAnalytics, and you also mentioned that they are not too good.
No, it's actually these tools are it's okay, but if you have a video game, if you're using these tools to analyze video games, they're just not perfect. The GameAnalytics is just better because it's designed for a game.
Yes, but you mentioned that it's important to get raw data and do the analysis from raw data. How can you get this raw data? What tools you can use?
There is a button, and online tools just download the raw data. Actually, it was absolutely missing for the Flurry. 2 months ago, but Flurry is owned by the Yahoo, and this is a different company now, and they just started to giving out raw data as well. I don't have any information about the Google Analytics. I think there is no such thing as downloading raw data in Analytics, but it doesn't really matter because it's built for websites.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
I'm the last one to remove.
Hi. How long until you got a firm grasp of all the different things? I know it only takes 24, 48 hours to get the actual step by step, but in the process, how long did you feel like it was enough to actually make a change to the game itself?
Actually, wasn't a test phase. We just create a campaign on Facebook. You can try our game for free. Yes, it's really cool. And we just play with the players. And we created some unique player name for ourselves to decide which one is the developer and which one is a real player. And we just play with other players and just constantly speak about the game. And we have a lot of questions right after a lot of idea about the game after 5 minutes. So yes, but using the online tool, it's something that's pretty useful. Actually, it's giving back error messages from the Unity. Sometimes it's pretty useful, and sometimes it's pretty frightening when you get a 1,000 series warning from a lot of games.
So it's not actually used in the, let's say, the final version of the game. It's rather initial phase where you are still fine-tuning the actual final or ongoing product.
Actually, we created an initial version, it was a test version for the game, and when we upload the game on the Steam, and we immediately started to collect data from the final users and start to decide, start to see which variables become different, what changed in the game, and so on and so on. So we are still collecting data from players.
Okay. Just how long do you feel like it is enough to decide something is affected? You say there are like separate changes, like sudden weeks that are slightly different or something.
Actually, we just see the what can I say? When we upload a new version of the game, it's usually just it's okay. This is a game change. So we have to cut the data from that point to that because there's a different game on the players as well. And sometimes it's become a little bit painful because some players just don't refresh the game and get a lot of different data from different players, different games, and so it's a bit complicated. But yes, if we have a new game on the Steam, a new vision, a new version of the game, so yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And so thank you for Presley for hosting us, and thank you for the beers and pizzas and the streaming and everything. Thank you for Ustream too, for our streaming possibilities. And first of all, thank you for coming. I'm very curious what are your feedbacks and what subjects are interesting for you. I ask you to write me if you want to present or if you have any hot topic you want to discuss. Otherwise, this was it. Thank you guys and have a very nice evening. I think we are asked to leave the premises in like half an hour or something, but we can continue talking in the Apatsuka restaurant and bar downstairs. So, thank you guys.